Alright, and there. I have just canceled my Netflix account. Good riddance.
Wait, what? How am I gonna finish watching my shows?
Well, let's see. You can start by getting a job and paying for your own Netflix account.
Scum, Netflix is a human right!
No. Healthcare is a human right.
By the way, just if something requires someone else's labor, it doesn't mean it can't still be a right. For example, we all have a right to an attorney. That requires someone else's labor, but it's a right we're all afforded.
You went full retard, man. Never go full retard.
Hello, my lovely viewers, and welcome back to another episode of Never Go Full Retard. And once again, we're going to be shaking things up because this time we're going to be talking about someone I actually like for once. Well, sort of. At least someone I used to like. Today we're going to be talking about the YouTuber Hunter Avallone. Now, I discovered Hunter about 2 or 3 years ago, and I watched a lot of his videos, and I found them entertaining. He's basically one of those political, social commentary kind of channels, like The Quartering, Armored Skeptic, or Shoe on Head, Blair White, stuff like that. And what originally pulled me towards his videos is his kind of edgy persona, and as an edgelord myself, I can appreciate that, and I found some of his videos compelling, well-researched, and even quite funny at times. Even some of his reviews of a lot of these garbage feminist movies are still quite good, and he still does have some videos that I would consider entertaining, or at least informative and worth watching. However, Hunter is one of those people that doesn't seem to have any kind of consistent principles, as lately, after getting his ass handed to him by a commie in a debate, he hasn't really been the same. He now claims to be a centrist, or as I put it, someone who can't decide and is easily swayed by the absolute juggernaut that is the two-party system that is specifically designed to screw over us, the people. But the irony is, Hunter is not completely moronic, at least not entirely, because he has spoken out against the two-party system, and I appreciate that. However, he's not willing to take that one extra step to at least go full anarchist or libertarian, and instead calls himself a centrist. And I don't have anything against centrists inherently as people. My main problem with them is I think they're naive and very easily swayed by either the right or the left, when both are just two sides of the same coin. They both want to use force to achieve their endgame. And I just have personally said, what's even the point of supporting the two-party system? And lately he seems to be going full SJW, because after getting destroyed in a debate by said commie, he's been going around saying things like, oh, Lauren Chen is a white supremacist, Blair White is a degenerate. He's been going around calling people neo-Nazis, and it's just like, what the hell? And I know this intro might be a little bit long, and you want to get into the clip I just showed you about, but I just want to kind of get you a little bit up to speed on Hunter as a channel, a person, and my kind of personal history with him and his content. But what we're going to look at here today is his absurd claim that healthcare is a human right. Now, Hunter has said a whole bunch of other stupid stuff that I disagree with, and maybe I'll get into that another day, but I want to focus on this absolute nonsense. And again, to further add on to the irony, Hunter once made a video debunking the claim that healthcare is a human right.
According to U.S. National Library of Medicine, healthcare is not a human right for a couple different reasons. First of all, healthcare is difficult to define. Maybe a quick visit to the doctor is healthcare, but is an organ transplant, cosmetic surgery, or the most expensive medicines or surgeries also considered a human right? Secondly, a right possessed by an individual implies a duty on the part of others. Are your human rights now suggesting you have a right to a doctor's service or time? To propose that healthcare be considered a human right, it is not only wrong-headed, it is unhelpful. Mature debate on the rationing and sharing of limited resources can hardly take place when citizens start from the premise that healthcare is their right, like a fair trial or the right to vote. Ironically enough, entitlement rarely gets you anything.
Yet then comes around and says that it is a human right. And at first I thought this was a joke because this is his liberal kid skit, which is meant to be like parody, satire, and all that. But he didn't seem to present it in a joking way. He seemed like he was genuinely trying to make a point, and if so, that's a problem. Now, if this is just a joke, I guess fine, whatever, but I'm going to debunk it regardless. And I can't believe I even have to explain this, and Hunter's argument is just absolutely pathetic. Well, healthcare is a human right because just because something requires someone's labor doesn't not make it a right. Basically, what his argument comes down to is the right to a lawyer exists, so therefore healthcare is a human right. No, Hunter, that's not how that works. There are two major problems with that. Number one, rights exist in a negative context. There is no positive rights. What you're advocating for is what is known as positive rights. Negative rights are the idea that you have a right to something, but no one has the right to use force to stop you from doing so. To put it simply, you have the right to own a gun for the purposes of self-defense. No one has the right to use force to stop you from doing so. You have the right to freedom of speech, however, no one has the right to try to use force to silence or censor you. So, in order to say that healthcare is a human right, is to say that you have the right to use force against doctors and taxpayers to force them to give someone healthcare, even if they may not have the ability to afford it. And that is absolutely absurd, because here's the harsh reality, Hunter. You do not have the right to anyone else's labor or the fruits of their labor. To say otherwise is to say that they are your slave. There are so many issues with trying to claim that healthcare is a human right, and it's so frustrating that I even have to explain this. It's like when I have to explain to people that free college is not actually free, and it's actually just a scam so people can raise taxes. But I digress. There is a big difference between a need and a right. Healthcare is a basic need that everyone is free to pursue. This means that the government cannot infringe on our right to pursue healthcare. But no one owes us healthcare. Healthcare is a good, just like food, clothing, and shelter. You don't get to say, I'm entitled to healthcare. And there's so many other problems with trying to say that healthcare is a human right. For example, what even is healthcare? For example, if I go in and just get a simple checkup, is that healthcare? If I go get surgery, that would obviously be considered healthcare, but that's the thing. What is and what isn't healthcare? Healthcare, would that include things like breast implants or cosmetic surgery? And how about things like sex transition surgeries? Because I know, Hunter, that you are aware of the fact that people are pushing this whole transgender children thing, and you've even done stories about people who have tried to force transgenderism on their child. So let's say healthcare does get considered a human right, and some insane leftist progressive tricks their child into thinking that they're transgender, or they blindly listen to their child when they say that they're transgender, even though they haven't been diagnosed with anything like gender dysphoria, and then they try to get drugs, or even, God forbid, try to pursue surgery. Does that mean that you then have the right to force that doctor or force taxpayers to pay for that child's transition? Like, do you start to see the problem here, Hunter? Again, it is absurd to claim this. And again, to say that you are entitled to a doctor's labor is to say that they are your slave. Doctors have to go to school to learn how to be doctors. They have to put thousands of dollars just to be able to learn how to be a doctor. And you can't just say, well, I get to come in and demand healthcare. Like, healthcare is different from country to country. What is considered healthcare in one country may not necessarily be something you will get in another country. A right is not something someone gives you. It's something that no one can take away. What you are trying to advocate for, Hunter, is privileges, something that can be taken away at any time. But a right is something that no one can take away from you. You absolutely have the right to pursue healthcare, but you don't have the right to point guns at doctors and taxpayers and say, pay for my healthcare, because that is essentially what you are doing, and that is unacceptable. I, as an anarchist, follow the non-aggression principle. I do not believe that force or coercion should be used against anyone, doctors, taxpayers, or even you. And the fact that you're not able to understand this shows that you are still extremely young and naive, Hunter. You seem to be able to be easily swayed by other people. Judging by what happened between you and that Vosh guy, I wouldn't be surprised if you just started adopting all these progressive politics just because you were so humiliated by him and you now no longer have confidence in your own beliefs. And it's quite sad to see, actually, because it, to me, tells me that you don't have any true principles or beliefs. Now, you may claim to have them, but I don't really believe that if you're willing to just take a 180 and just all of a sudden go from rationally explaining why healthcare isn't a human right to saying, actually, healthcare is a human right. And my only argument for this is the right to a lawyer exists. And guess what? The right to a lawyer is dog shit too. You're not entitled to a lawyer. You're not entitled to that lawyer's labor. The same is true for doctors. You're not entitled to anyone's labor. Am I making this point crystal clear, Hunter? Because I can't believe I even have to explain this to someone who should be smart enough to know better. Here is something I want you to perfectly understand, Hunter. The Declaration of Independence states that we have an inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That doesn't mean that our people should be forced to sustain our life or make us happy. Many people have a fundamental misunderstanding of the negative rights listed in the following document. A negative right is a right to not have something done to us, the right to not be killed, the right to not have our property confiscated, the right to not have our speech punished, our negative rights. And the fact that you are just willing to just say this shows that you have either given up or, again, you are easily swayed. Because progressives have invented so-called positive rights in massive quotations that are listed nowhere in our founding documents. A positive right is a right to something such as healthcare, housing, and clothing. The United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights claims that everyone has a right to healthcare. Of course, there's no such thing as free healthcare. The government has no money of its own, which means that it cannot give anyone healthcare without first taking away something from someone else through extortion. Or, as government likes to call it to make it seem like it's not theft, taxation. And I know you support taxation, Hunter, and that's another thing I'll get into, but I just want to focus on this. And Hunter, if you so happen to see this video and you decide to make a response to me, I hope you actually decide to address my arguments and not do what you pulled with the quartering, where you decide to throw petty insults at the guy, because trust me, that won't end well for you, because on top of being an incredibly sharp, dominant debater, I am also a big fan of the roast, and you would be thoroughly roasted if you even so much as tried. But that's one thing I find funny. You got completely destroyed and exposed by the quartering. If you can't not get destroyed by him, I mean, no offense to the quartering, he's smart, and I do agree with some of the things he says, I'm just not the biggest fan of his style of content, then what chance do you have against an anarchist like me? Just saying. So, I look forward to, if you see this video, hopefully a calm, logical discussion. As I do not think you are a bad person, Hunter, I just think you are heavily misguided. And, again, I get it. You're young, sometimes we don't always know where we need to go. But trust me, Hunter, if you continue down the path you're going down, you are going to become the very thing you made fun of and debated against for so long. So, maybe he can turn it around. Let's hope not.
Oh my god, what the fuck is this?